Sandra felt something unusual in her chest when she entered the quiet studio hallway. The air carried a soft calm that made her steps slower than usual. Her mind kept repeating one thought again and again. She needed to talk to Keanu about something important. She held a small book in her hand and pressed her fingers gently against its cover. She had finished reading it last night, and it had changed something deep inside her. The words had touched a place she rarely shared with anyone, and she wondered if Keanu would understand that feeling. Keanu stood near the far end of the hallway. He was reading a message on his phone with his usual calm posture. His shoulders relaxed and his eyes focused with quiet attention. He looked peaceful, almost unaware of the chaos that waited inside the busy set behind the door. Sandra watched him for a few seconds, her heart beating faster than she expected. She trusted him more than she trusted most people, and she did not want to lose that trust by saying something wrong. She walked toward him with careful steps, her voice soft but steady as she said his name. Keanu turned immediately with a warm smile that made her feel safer without a single word being spoken. He noticed the book in her hand and asked about it with gentle curiosity. Sandra hesitated for a moment because she did not plan to talk about the book this early. Her throat tightened with a quiet emotion she could not fully explain. The book had given her comfort during a difficult week, the kind of week where every breath felt heavier and every silence felt longer. She wanted to share this with someone who would not judge her, someone who would listen with respect. Keanu was that person, and she knew it. Yet saying it out loud still felt like standing on a fragile edge. She held the book up slowly, her fingers trembling slightly, and said she wanted him to read it. Her voice carried a soft sincerity that surprised even her. Keanu looked at the book with focused attention and asked if it meant something to her. She nodded with quiet honesty, telling him the pages helped her understand her own thoughts better during lonely nights. There was a brief moment of silence between them, but it was not uncomfortable. It was warm and full of unspoken understanding. Keanu placed his phone aside and took the book from her with gentle hands, his eyes careful and respectful, as if he understood how important the gesture was. Sandra felt a wave of relief and fear mixed together. Relief because she finally shared something vulnerable, and fear because she did not know how he would feel after reading it. Keanu asked if she wanted him to read it soon or whenever he had time. Sandra felt her heart pull at her slightly. She wanted him to read it soon because she needed someone to understand what she had felt, but she did not want to burden him. She replied that he could read it whenever he wished, and her tone was calm, but her fingers tightened behind her back, showing the truth she hid. Keanu smiled softly and told her he would read it tonight, his voice full of sincerity that made her chest tighten. She looked up with a surprised expression because she did not expect such a quick response. That small moment made her feel seen in a way she had not felt in months, maybe years. The hallway felt brighter for a second, as if the calm presence between them had shifted into something stronger, something comforting. Keanu placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder and thanked her for trusting him with something so personal. The warmth in his gesture felt like a quiet promise, a promise that he respected her feelings more than she realized. Sandra nodded slowly, her eyes soft and grateful. She wanted to say something more, but her voice refused to come out, so she simply whispered a gentle thank you and stepped back with a shy smile. Keanu looked at the book again with a thoughtful expression, and Sandra wondered if he would feel the same connection she felt when she read it. As Keanu walked away with the book in his hand, Sandra watched him with a mixture of hope and fear. She did not know that the night ahead would change everything between them. She did not know that one book would open a door she never planned to open. And she did not know that Keanu would not sleep at all that night, because he would read every page until sunrise. Sandra woke up early the next morning with a strange heaviness in her chest. The sun was still soft outside her window, and the quiet room felt too still for her racing thoughts. She kept thinking about the moment she handed the book to Keanu. Every small detail replayed in her mind like a slow echo, and she wondered if he had actually read anything yet. Her heart beat a little faster when she remembered his promise to read it that night. She walked into the studio later than usual, her steps slightly slower, her mind full of questions she could not silence. Did he understand the message inside the book? Did he feel the emotions she felt? Did he stay awake, or did he forget after a long day? She reached the dressing area and noticed something surprising. The place was unusually quiet. Some crew members greeted her gently, but their smiles held a tiny hint of curiosity. She wondered if something had happened before she arrived. Sandra entered the small waiting room and froze for a second. Keanu was already there. He sat at the table with the book in front of him, and he looked different this morning, his eyes tired yet focused, his posture calm but carrying a strange intensity. He lifted his gaze toward her, and she felt her heartbeat skip one slow beat. She asked him softly if he was all right. Keanu gave a faint smile and said he stayed awake through the entire night. Sandra felt a cold breath run down her arms. She had not expected that he would read the whole book without resting. She asked if he liked it, but her voice cracked slightly because she feared the answer. Keanu touched the book with quiet respect and said the story inside was powerful. It carried emotions he did not expect, and it reminded him of things he usually stayed silent about. Sandra felt her chest tighten with a mix of empathy and surprise. She asked which part stayed with him the most. Keanu took a moment before speaking, his eyes softening in a way that showed deep meaning. He said the book talked about courage during lonely moments and about carrying pain with strength even when no one is watching. He said those pages felt almost too real. Sandra felt her throat close for a moment because she realized he did not just read it. He felt it. She sat across from him slowly, her hands resting together on the table. She could not hide the emotion in her eyes. She told him the book helped her during a painful week, and reading those words made her feel less alone. Keanu listened with full attention, his face calm and sincere. He did not interrupt her even once. His silence made her feel heard in a way she rarely felt. Keanu then said he wanted to ask her something, his tone gentle yet serious. Sandra felt her breath pause. He leaned forward slightly and asked if she gave him the book because she felt something was wrong recently. His question went straight into the place she tried to hide. She lowered her eyes for a moment before answering. She told him she had been feeling overwhelmed, not by work but by her own thoughts, and she did not know how to explain that to anyone. Keanu nodded with deep understanding, his eyes showing calm concern. He asked if she felt better now. Sandra wanted to say yes, but she could not lie to him. So she said she was trying. Keanu reached out and gently placed his hand over hers. The warmth of his touch felt like a comforting anchor. Her heartbeat slowed for the first time in days. He told her she did something brave by sharing the book, because opening up to someone takes strength that most people do not recognize. His voice held a softness that made her eyes sting with quiet emotion. The room stayed silent for a long moment. Neither of them moved, but something unspoken grew between them. Something delicate. Something safe. Sandra felt a tear forming at the corner of her eye, but she blinked it away quickly. She did not want to break the moment. Keanu noticed, but he did not mention it. He simply squeezed her hand a little more gently, letting her know he understood without any words. Then there was a small knock at the door. A crew member entered and said they needed them on set. The moment broke, but the feeling stayed. As they walked toward the set together, Sandra kept glancing at Keanu. His tired eyes told her he had not slept even a single hour, yet his energy was calm and steady. It felt like he carried something from the book with him, something that changed the way he looked at the world this morning. When they reached the entrance of the set, Keanu stopped her gently. He said he wanted to talk more about the book later. His expression was serious yet warm, and Sandra felt a strange mix of anticipation and fear. She nodded slowly, but she did not realize that their next conversation would reveal something she never expected. Something that would shift everything between them. Because Keanu had found something inside the book. Something he did not tell her yet. Something that connected directly to her past. Sandra walked onto the set with careful steps, her mind still circling around Keanu's last words. She felt a quiet tension inside her chest because she sensed he had discovered something deeper in the book. She glanced at him from a distance and noticed how focused he looked, his expression calm but carrying an unusual weight, like he was thinking about something he could not shake off. The morning passed slower than usual. Every scene felt longer, every break felt shorter, and every time she looked at Keanu, he seemed lost in thought. She tried to distract herself with work, but her thoughts kept returning to the same question. What did he find in that book? What did he understand that she had never said? During lunch break, she sat alone near a corner table. The sound of distant conversations filled the room, but none of them reached her fully. She stared at her hands for a few moments, trying to steady her breathing. Her calm broke slightly when she heard Keanu's footsteps approaching. He sat beside her without saying anything at first. His silence felt thoughtful, not distant, and she felt her heart thump harder. Finally, he spoke, his tone low and steady. He asked her if she remembered a specific chapter in the book. Her face tensed. She nodded slowly. That chapter had been the hardest one for her to read. Keanu said that chapter talked about a person who hides emotional pain behind gentle smiles. Someone who supports everyone but never asks for support. Someone who feels heavy inside but never lets anyone see the weight. Sandra looked away immediately, her eyes blinking faster. She felt her breath tighten. She whispered that she remembered it clearly. Keanu leaned slightly closer, his voice softer than before. He said the chapter reminded him of her. The words hit her like a gentle but unexpected wave, and she froze. She felt exposed, not in a painful way, but in a way she had never expected. She tried to answer, but her voice broke halfway. Keanu waited patiently without rushing her, his presence calm and grounding. After a few seconds, she managed to say she never wanted anyone to see that side of her. Keanu nodded with full understanding. He said sometimes the strongest people also carry the quietest storms. Sandra felt something shift inside her chest, like a long-held tension finally cracking. She told him softly that the book felt like someone had written her hidden thoughts on paper. Keanu listened carefully, his eyes gentle but filled with a seriousness she rarely saw in him. Then he mentioned something that made her heart shake. He said the author used a specific line that felt too familiar, a line that spoke about losing someone important and pretending everything was fine. Sandra felt her stomach drop. She knew exactly which line he meant. That line had been the reason she picked up the book in the first place. Keanu asked her quietly if the line connected to something from her past. Sandra hesitated for a painful moment before nodding, her voice almost a whisper. She said she once lost someone she cared about deeply, and she carried that silent grief for years. She never talked about it because people expected her to stay strong, and staying silent became easier than explaining pain. Keanu's eyes softened with deep empathy. He did not push for details. He did not ask anything more. He simply placed his hand gently on her arm and said she did not have to explain anything she was not ready to share. His kindness felt like a warm blanket around a fragile part of her heart. Then something unexpected happened. Sandra noticed Keanu's expression change, not with discomfort, but with a strange, quiet conflict. She asked gently if something was wrong. Keanu hesitated for the first time since their conversation began. He said he found a handwritten note inside the book. Sandra blinked with confusion. A note? Inside the book she had bought. She had never seen any note inside. She leaned forward with sudden tension and asked what the note said. Keanu looked down for a moment before answering, his voice lower than before. He said the note carried a message about healing and letting go, but there was something more. Something personal. Sandra felt her hands grow cold. She asked who wrote it. Keanu looked into her eyes with a subtle seriousness. He said the handwriting did not look like a stranger's. It looked familiar. Her heart skipped a beat. Familiar? But familiar to who? Keanu said he would show her the note, but he wanted to make sure she was ready, because the words inside might bring back memories she had tried to leave behind. Sandra felt a quiet trembling inside her. She wanted to see the note, but she feared what it might reveal. She nodded slowly, her voice soft. She said she was ready, even though she was not sure if she truly was. Keanu reached into his jacket pocket to take out the folded piece of paper. Sandra held her breath, her pulse heavy and loud. She did not know yet. The words on that small piece of paper would change everything she believed about her past. Keanu unfolded the small paper with gentle care, the edges slightly worn from the night he spent reading it. Sandra watched every movement with a tight feeling in her chest, her fingers lightly pressing against her palms as she braced herself. The room around them felt quieter than usual. The distant sounds of the set faded into a soft blur. All that existed in this moment was the note, and the fear rising slowly inside her heart. Keanu placed the paper on the table between them, the handwriting soft and slightly curved, and Sandra felt her breath catch because something about the shape of the letters felt strangely familiar. She leaned closer, her pulse beating in her ears, her eyes tracing each line slowly as Keanu waited with patient silence. The message on the paper said something simple yet heavy. It talked about carrying quiet pain with dignity and about finding peace through gentle strength. But the final sentence pulled the ground from beneath her. The final sentence said, "The world may not see your sadness, but I do." Sandra stared at the words as a cold wave ran through her spine. She knew those words. Someone once said something similar to her many years ago. Someone she had never forgotten. Her throat tightened and she whispered that she recognized the writing. Keanu leaned a little closer and asked softly who it belonged to. Sandra hesitated, her eyes blinking faster as emotions stirred beneath her calm. She said it looked like the handwriting of a friend she lost long ago. A friend who always encouraged her to stay strong. Someone whose kindness shaped the way she saw the world. Keanu listened quietly, his expression full of understanding but also carrying a subtle concern. He asked if she was certain. Sandra took a deep breath and nodded, her voice trembling slightly as she said the handwriting was almost the same. Her hands rested on the table, but they felt unusually cold. The silence between them grew heavier with each passing second, the air almost vibrating with unspoken questions. Finally, Keanu asked the question she feared. He asked if the friend had written anything like this to her before. Sandra swallowed hard and admitted yes. Her friend had once told her the same words during a very painful phase of her life. A phase she rarely talked about. Keanu lowered his eyes for a moment, as if he understood something deeper than she had said. Then he asked how the note ended up inside the book she bought. Sandra shook her head slowly. She had no answer. She bought the book from a small corner store without checking the pages properly. She thought the book was just a book. She had no idea it carried a message that touched the deepest part of her past. Keanu told her gently that the note might not be from the same person, but he also said coincidences, this powerful, often carry hidden meaning. Sandra felt a strange mix of fear and curiosity. She had spent many years trying to let go of old memories. Yet here they were, returning through the pages of a book she shared with someone she trusted. Keanu reached out and covered the note with his hand, his touch protective and steady. He said he wanted her to understand something. He said the note appeared during a moment when she needed comfort the most. And maybe the timing mattered more than the source. His kindness softened her tense breathing, but the confusion inside her did not fade. She asked him quietly if he thought the note was a sign. Keanu did not give a simple answer. He said the world sometimes sends reminders when we try too hard to forget. Sandra felt her eyes sting gently. She had never expected him to understand her thoughts so deeply. Then something unexpected happened. Keanu asked another question, a question that made her heart race faster. He asked if she ever shared this book with anyone before. Sandra felt herself freeze. She whispered no. She bought it only a few days ago, and she had never told anyone about it. Keanu nodded slowly, his eyes thoughtful, his fingers tapping the folded paper lightly. He said something felt off. Something did not add up. Sandra felt tension rise again. She asked what he meant. Keanu said the note looked fresh. The ink looked recent. Not something written years ago. Not something forgotten inside an old book. A chill crawled across her skin. She asked him what he was trying to say. Keanu looked at her with calm seriousness and said he believed the note was placed inside the book recently. Not by accident. Not by a stranger. But by someone who knew her pain. Sandra's breath stopped for a moment, her mind spinning, because his words opened a possibility she never considered. A possibility that changed everything. What if the person who wrote the note was not from her past, but from her present? Sandra felt the world tilt slightly as Keanu's words settled in her mind. She stared at the folded note with a quiet dread growing inside her chest. The idea that someone from her present placed it there felt heavier than any memory from her past. She pressed her fingers together and tried to steady her breathing. The room felt warm, but her hands were cold. A soft tremble moved through her arms as she tried to make sense of everything. Keanu stayed calm beside her, his presence steady like a safe anchor. He waited patiently until she looked up again, his eyes full of concern yet guided by a quiet clarity. He asked her softly if anyone knew she bought the book recently. Sandra shook her head slowly and said she had not told anyone. She bought it quietly during a walk when she needed space. No one was with her. No one saw her reading it. No one knew she brought it to the studio. Keanu took a slow, thoughtful breath and said it still did not change the fact that the note looked recent, his voice gentle but firm. He said he could feel something intentional behind it. Sandra felt another tight pull in her chest. Her thoughts raced in circles as she tried to imagine who could have written those words. Yet she found nothing. No answer. No name. Just confusion and fear wrapped inside a fragile hope. She whispered that she did not want to believe someone was watching her struggle. She did not want to think someone noticed her private emotions without her saying anything. Keanu leaned closer and said noticing someone's quiet pain was not the same as invading it. Some people simply cared, and sometimes they cared silently. His words soothed her in a way she did not expect, but the confusion still sat heavy in her heart. She asked him gently what he was thinking. Keanu looked at the note again, his eyes narrowing slightly as he studied each curve of the handwriting. He said the handwriting seemed familiar, not in a distant way, but in a way that felt close, recent, almost present in their daily life. Sandra felt her breath catch. She asked if he recognized it. Keanu paused for a moment and then shook his head slowly. He said he did not want to guess until he was sure. But he felt something he could not ignore. The silence between them stretched, filled with tension and unspoken questions. Sandra felt her mind drift back to her tiring week, her late nights, her quiet thoughts, her attempts to smile even when she felt empty inside. She wondered quietly, did someone really see through her gentle mask? Did someone understand her sadness without her speaking? Keanu noticed the worry forming in her eyes and reached out, placing his hand gently on top of hers, his touch warm and grounding. He told her she was not alone in this. Whatever the note meant, whatever its purpose, they would figure it out together. Sandra felt a warmth rise inside her chest, a soft emotion she tried to hide, her eyes lowered as her throat filled with a tender ache. She whispered a thank you in a fragile voice, her gratitude deep and sincere. Keanu smiled softly, his expression carrying a kindness that made her heart feel lighter for the first time that day. But then, another surprise arrived. A crew member approached their table quietly and placed a small envelope in front of them. The envelope plain and simple with her name written on it in the same soft handwriting. Sandra felt her entire body stiffen. Keanu's eyes widened slightly, his calm cracking for a second. The crew member said someone asked him to deliver it, but he did not know who. And then he walked away. Sandra stared at the envelope, her breath shallow, her fingers frozen, her mind unable to grasp the moment. She asked Keanu in a whisper whether she should open it. Keanu nodded gently, but his eyes stayed alert, like he was ready to protect her from anything that might hurt her. Sandra lifted the envelope with trembling hands and slowly opened the flap. Inside was another folded paper. She felt her pulse thump loudly in her ears. Keanu leaned closer, their shoulders almost touching, their breaths quiet and careful. Sandra unfolded the paper, her eyes scanning the handwritten message. The first line said, "You are not as alone as you think." Her heartbeat quickened. The second line said, "Someone sees your strength even when you forget it yourself." Her hands shook. Keanu rested his hand gently on her back, steadying her as she read the final line. The final line said, "I am closer than you realize." Sandra froze completely. Her breath caught. Her eyes lifted slowly toward Keanu. Because she suddenly realized, the handwriting did not just look familiar. It looked almost identical to something she saw every day on set. Her heart raced, her vision blurred with emotion, her voice barely a whisper. She asked Keanu, what if the person who wrote this was someone she trusted deeply, someone she saw every day, someone she never expected? Keanu held her gaze, his expression calm and unreadable. But his eyes carried a truth she was not prepared for. Sandra stared at Keanu with her heart pounding against her ribs. The words in the letter echoed in her mind like a slow, trembling wave. She felt the room around her fade until only Keanu's steady presence remained. His expression calm, his posture still, yet his eyes held a depth that made her breath tighten. She whispered his name softly, her voice fragile and unsure. She asked him if he knew who wrote the letters. Keanu did not answer immediately. He looked down at the envelope and then back at her. His silence said more than any words ever could. Sandra felt a mix of fear and hope rise inside her chest. She asked again, this time with a trembling softness. Did he know? Could he tell? Why did the handwriting feel so familiar? Keanu took a slow breath, his voice gentle but steady as he said he wanted to explain something. He said he did not want to confuse her. He did not want to make her emotional pain heavier. But he also did not want to hide the truth anymore. Sandra leaned closer slightly, her hands resting together tightly, her voice barely a whisper as she asked him to continue. Keanu said he had noticed her quiet discomfort for weeks, the way she forced smiles, the way she stepped away during breaks, the way her eyes softened whenever she read a few pages of the book. He said he respected her silence, but he also saw her pain, even when she tried to hide it. Sandra lowered her eyes, a soft ache building behind her ribs. She did not know anyone had noticed. She always believed she moved through the world quietly, without being truly seen. Keanu reached out and touched her hand gently, his warmth calming the tension in her shoulders. He said he wanted to help her without overwhelming her. He wanted to comfort her without crossing any boundary. So he wrote a message, simple and sincere, and he slipped it into her book the day she left it unattended on the table. He thought it would stay hidden until she needed it most. Sandra's breath caught as she finally understood. The handwriting, the message, the timing, everything aligned in a single clear realization. The notes were from Keanu. Her chest tightened in a way she could not explain, her eyes filled with soft tears she refused to let fall. She looked at him with a mixture of surprise and fragile relief. She whispered that she never expected it. She never imagined he cared that deeply. Keanu smiled gently, not with pride but with humility. He said he only wanted her to know she was not alone, even when she felt silent inside. He said she carried her emotions with such grace that most people missed the weight behind them. But he saw it, not because he chose to watch her, but because he understood what quiet pain looked like. He had lived with it too. Sandra felt her heart soften in a way she had not felt in a long time, a warmth spreading through her chest as she looked at him. She asked quietly why he wrote the second note, the one delivered inside the envelope. Keanu took a slow breath, his eyes gentle yet honest. He said he wrote that one after reading the book, because the story inside showed him a side of her that she never spoke about. A side full of strength, and softness, and unspoken battles. He said he wanted her to feel supported, not from a distance, but from someone who genuinely cared. Sandra's eyes filled with deep emotion. She felt the careful kindness in every word he spoke. She felt the sincerity in his voice and the respect in his gestures. She whispered that she had been carrying too much alone, and she did not know how to share it. Keanu squeezed her hand softly and told her she did not have to share everything. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever, unless she wanted to. He said he would stay beside her, with patience, with gentleness, with respect. Sandra felt her throat tighten with a soft ache, but this ache carried peace, not pain. She whispered a quiet thank you, her voice warm with sincerity, her eyes holding a gratitude she could not fully express. Keanu shook his head with a tender smile and said she did not need to thank him, because caring for someone was not an obligation. It was a choice, and he chose to care for her. The weight in her heart finally loosened. The fear that held her for days drifted away. She felt lighter, steady, safe. The rest of the set buzzed with activity around them, but the moment between them stayed quiet and peaceful. Keanu handed her the notes gently and told her she could keep them or throw them away. The choice belonged to her, but he wanted her to know one thing clearly. The final line of the letter was not a mystery. It was not a warning. It was not a confusion. When it said, "I am closer than you realize," it simply meant he was there, standing by her, watching out for her, in the simplest and kindest way possible. Sandra let out a soft breath, her heart calm, her smile warm. She folded the notes carefully and kept them safe inside her hand. Her voice steady as she told him she wanted to keep them, because they meant more than he understood. Keanu nodded gently, his expression soft and full of respect. Sandra felt a new strength grow inside her, not because the pain disappeared, but because someone finally understood it. Without judgment, without pressure, without asking for anything in return. As they walked together toward the set again, side by side, a quiet bond formed between them. A bond built not from dramatic moments, but from gentle understanding and sincere kindness. And in that moment, Sandra realized something simple and beautiful. Sometimes the most powerful support comes from someone who sees your heart, even before you speak a single word.